this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. Today we are going to speak to someone who has taken their own personal experience and weaved it into their clinical work and can share some of their experience in starting their own practice and making the shift from clinician to business owner. Megan Tavares, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
I really am too.
Podcasts.
Yeah, podcasting is a great time. And I have to be honest, it has been so cool, especially in this case, to have someone that I knew at a previous time in my life, but didn't really get the opportunity to know in the ways that I would want to. And then we reconnect because it's a small world. And now there's this platform that I can use this opportunity to do just that. So I'm happy to have you. So let's get started. I want to hear more about your career climb. So share with us how you got to where you are today doing the work that you're doing.
Okay, so it's definitely been a journey. And I know you've had people on, like when you've used the word climb, like It's definitely been a climb. And it has. So my career path, it has been a mix of just like being at the right place at the right time, mixed with luck and just hard work, know. So I actually started out as a job coach when I was 18 years old, working for People Incorporated. Yeah. Because my mom worked at the agency. And so like you just had your kids come, like if they were home from college for the summer.
Yeah.
And we'd work for the summer. I'd go back to school. I'd come home on the weekends, work residential. So I kind of made my way through the adult services of People Inc. And then when I graduated from Rhode Island College with my MSW, I was able to make the shift from the adult world to their early intervention program because I knew I wanted to work with kids and families. And I have to say, as somebody starting out in the field, that is the ideal position. Working in a program like that where it's home-based. So you really get a sense of what families are experiencing. I was able to hone my social work skills. Yeah. But I was also able to learn all about child development, and really learn the importance of like that holistic point of view and understanding the whole story, And so I was there for about 6 years, and then I just started getting like restless because it's like, I've been doing this. I would really like to like move forward in my clinical skills. So that's where I ended up at St. Anne's with the youth trauma program. Yeah. And that was another real formative experience for me, both personally and professionally, because Jen Salem Russo, who's actually not there anymore, but there's not a day that goes by that like I don't think of her in some capacity because she was an amazing supervisor and she just taught us so much about how to work collaboratively, how to be a professional, in a group of women and, which can be hard sometimes.
Definitely.
and she ran a tight ship. Like there was no gossip, there was no nothing. It was like you showed up, you did your job,
Mm-hmm.
and you got along with everybody, and
Nice.
being able to bring my EI experience and then learn all all the stuff about trauma
Mm-hmm.
really, that's a unique combination, early childhood and
Yes.
trauma, because there really is a certain skill set that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been able to take those two experiences and move forward. And so where my personal journey started to intersect
Mm-hmm.
professionally was when I had my second baby, and I'm on maternity leave,
Yep.
and I'm thinking, I don't know how I am going to balance working some of the later, not too late, but early evenings. Because
Yes.
on Tuesdays, I would be working from 8 in the morning till 7 at night, because I would start over at the Fernandes Center in their growth and nutrition clinic, head to the hospital, do my YTP work. And so with two little ones, and I was nursing, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And
That's a
so
lot.
I ended up back at People Incorporated, which kind of felt like going home a little bit,
Yeah.
um, at their preschool. And the position was like an adjustment counselor, but for early childhood.
Okay.
And that was really nice because I was able to take all my experiences, put it into practice. I was able to, just do all kinds of things, like run groups in the classrooms, provide education to staff, provide education to parents, do some parent work,
Mm-hmm.
um, while still working directly with kiddos, because that was what was really fueling me. Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody says, how could you do that kind of work? But kids are so resilient, and they say funny things, and they just make the work joyful. So I,
Yes.
I enjoyed that. And getting to leave at 3:30 in the afternoon was nice, to be able to get home. Um, I started to really think about private practice about 4 years in, um, partly because I was starting to need a lot more flexibility, but also um, I was having the same conversation with some people, like over and over and over again, about like what
Mm-hmm.
kids needed. And I was starting to get a little bit burnt out with
Sure.
kind of like being the lone social worker there, and being the voice for kids all the time. It was like, all
Yeah.
right, I kind of need to take a step back and evaluate here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then in 2021, in December, my mother-in-law passed away unexpectedly. And she was my go-to for everything childcare related. If I got
Mm-hmm.
stuck at work late, she was there. If I, couldn't get home for the bus on time, or, bringing the kids to school, whatever it was, she was so
Yeah.
willing to do it. And I knew that was going to fall on me.
Yep.
And so I stayed there probably about another year. Um, but it was hard. Like I knew my husband was struggling. I knew my
Yep.
father-in-law was struggling. And so I just needed to be around more. Like that morning routine, like getting them
Mm-hmm.
ready for school. Like neither of them were sleeping well at night. And so that was like bleeding into the morning routine with my
Mm-hmm.
boys. Um, but also my oldest has really mild CP from just like a really long labor, and has a lot of like PT appointments and
Yeah.
things like that. And it was getting to the point where I was getting so anxious asking for time off, around that
Remember that feeling.
yes. And so it's nice, it's so nice now to like have control of my schedule. And that's what I really needed, was the control over my schedule. But
Yeah.
I was also really feeling that pull after my experience with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, that I really have a unique opportunity to really help other women in a way that maybe other clinicians might not be able to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really healing for me and empowering. to be able to do that. It was like I took this really shitty situation
Mm-hmm.
and was able to come out the other side and now sit across from women and tell them, like,
Yeah.
this is proof it's going to be okay. Like, it's
Yes.
hard right now, but just like Postpartum Support International says, like,
Mhm.
you know, with help, you'll get better. And I'm
Yeah.
proof of that, you know? And so that's really been my long and windy road to private practice.
What an incredible foundation. You speak of working with children and families, and then having that really solid trauma, education, supervision, experience.
Mm.
I feel like that really allowed you to show up ready for almost anything. But then bringing in your own personal experience, I think what you're really speaking to is that authenticity that comes from lived experience. And clients can feel that and they recognize that even if you don't share a ton about your personal journey, they know when someone gets it. Has that been your experience?
Yes. Yeah. And you know from leading the climb and you and April, you know,
Mhm.
that kind of work is really nuanced. Understanding perinatal mental health disorders, because like if you find yourself struggling and in front of a clinician that's not necessarily trained in PMADs, like if you start talking about, like, say, intrusive thoughts,
Mhm.
somebody might really take that and run with that in the wrong
Yes.
way and will do a disservice to that mom. But if
Mhm.
you can say, like, yeah, you know, they're scary, but
Mhm.
that's not you because you're telling me, like, that's not you. And I've also had that experience. Like, we can work together to get you through this.
For sure. And I think the hope piece that you're speaking to,
Yes.
or like really being that living proof of, I've had a very similar experience, even though yours is your own unique
Hmm.
experience, but that it is not something that is going to last forever. And here are some
Right.
things that you can try to help you get through that period and that you don't have to do it alone. And they're already taking such a significant step to work with
Mhm.
you. So tell us about how that has shifted maybe some of your marketing. I know a lot of us that are insurance-based practices don't necessarily have to invest a ton, but I'm sure that that's led to different connections and really helped you to identify yourself as someone who has this specialty. What has that looked like and that transition been like through your practice?
Yeah, you know, I haven't had to do a ton of marketing, like you said,
Mhm.
because of, you know, the insurance based practice, but um, I utilize Facebook a
Mhm.
lot. The Massachusetts Mental Health Facebook group.
Yeah.
I want to say that is probably where a lot of my referrals come from, because other clinicians are full. So, like, I might not know somebody, like, we've never met, but there
Mhm.
are names now, like, I recognize, and we've, you know, talked over Facebook, emailed with each other,
Yeah.
things like that. Um, and then from that, I actually got connected to Boston University,
Mhm.
their employee assistance program.
Okay.
And so they often will refer to me,
Mhm.
which is interesting because I'm getting like a crash course in like academia and how it impacts people.
Sure.
I never thought like that's, you know, that would be something I've learned about, but you never know what people are going to present with, you
Yeah.
know? I will say at the start, I put a ton of time and effort into my website. And I
Yes.
really think that
It
has been,
shows.
thank you.
It's
I think that's
beautiful.
been the key factor is because when
Mhm.
people have gone to the website, because people have said that to me, like, I looked at your website and it seems like you're a really good fit. I had
Mhm.
one mom say, like, where have you been?
Oh.
Like this whole time, you know, after reading the website. But because I had my own lived experience, I knew like what I would have wanted, you know, in a therapist. And the therapist I had after I had Daniel was wonderful.
Oh, good.
But I wanted to bring like my warm fuzziness, that authenticity.
Mhm.
I didn't want it to be a cold clinical experience for anybody. I
Yeah.
wanted it to feel like you're sitting down with somebody that you can share this really difficult stuff with. And so that was really present in my mind when I was
Mhm.
working on the website.
Yeah.
And actually, it was a lot of fun. Like, I had a lot of false starts with it, but once I learned how to use Squarespace, once I learned how to use Canva and do like all
Mhm.
these like cool tricks, I was able to get it up and running. But yeah,
I
I
give you
really
so
see
much
that.
credit. I didn't
Thank
realize
you.
you never really know that you did so much of that yourself. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, the whole thing. I just
Mhm.
used like the Squarespace template and went from there, you
Yeah.
know? But now moving forward, like if I do put little things together for marketing, my goal at some point is to really get going with like a social media presence, that content creation, partly because it's so
Yeah.
much fun. Um, you
It
know,
really is.
I learned how to do it now, and I can do it. I mean, I've made like cool things for my kids now that I know how to use
Yeah.
it. It's just, it's
That's
great.
awesome. It's a whole nother avenue to just keep things interesting and tap into that
Exactly.
creative side that we have. So I would love to hear from where you are now reflecting back, because a lot of our listeners are those that might be in the early stages of their practice. Maybe they're even contemplating whether or not private practice is the right move for them. What are some things that you can think of that might have been challenging, that you kind of came out on the other side? Any tips, any tricks, anything that you can share that would be helpful to someone that is at that earlier stage of the process?
I think really making connections with people and
Hmm.
doing the research first, learning about credentialing,
Hmm.
learning about, you know, different things with insurance companies, um, learning, even like learning about yourself. Like this journey, I have to say, has forced me to confront so many things. Like,
I want to give you an air high five right now. I completely, hold on, let's do it together. Three,
yeah,
2, 1. Yes, because I could not agree more. And thank you for saying that. So, yeah, tell us more.
yeah. So, like imposter syndrome. So, even though I have this lived experience, oh my God, there would be so many times I would log off a session and be like, do they think I know what I'm doing? Do I know what
Yes.
I'm doing? Like, is it like, am I okay? Like, I am no Karen Kleiman here, is this okay?
Yes.
So really working through that through from
Hmm.
the clinician side, but also like the business piece of it. I do
Absolutely.
not have a head for business.
Hmm.
Boundary setting with clients as far as like charging my no-show rate, things like that.
Hmm.
And I will say this whole thing with Change Healthcare
Hmm.
and the cyber attack has forced me to like really buckle down with
Okay.
that, because you know I was coming from the perspective like, well, I get it, they're moms and they're struggling, the baby's
Yes.
sick,
It's
this
so
and
easy to
that.
operate based off of that as opposed to that business
Exactly.
mindset.
But
Hmm.
now that like billing is really like backed up, because I take care of I do everything for my practice.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Income has to come in. Like,
Right.
this isn't just me providing free service. And I will say, it made me really anxious, but it was the best thing ever,
Hmm.
because like one of my clients, she has a tendency to overbook herself.
Hmm.
And then she's either no showing or canceling at the last minute.
Yep.
Last week, she actually said to me, I can't meet with you next week. And it was like the best thing, because I knew going in, like, okay, I can either offer that spot to somebody else,
Right.
I can figure out something for myself. And it
Hmm.
allowed us to have a really honest conversation. Like, I get you're overloaded, and that's okay. Like, I'm not annoyed with you, because that was her reaction. Are you totally annoyed with me? And I said, absolutely not. But this is part of the work we do
It
together.
is.
And it's okay. You're going to have
Hmm.
things come up, but we have to be responsible about it, you know?
For sure. I mean, a lot of what you're speaking to is fine tuning a lot of what makes a business successful. And I know you had said before we started recording, that's really a goal for yourself this year.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the things that you've put in place that have come from maybe some of those experiences that you think are really setting you up for success and getting a lot of that solid?
So I'm kind of in the process of that right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, even things like my welcome letter, I had to get started, I just had like very generic paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like, really adding my own, like, making it authentic to me, like the
Sure.
language in it, but also
Personalizing.
being really clear about this is the relationship, and that even though I'm going to, be warm and fuzzy and all that, there is still going to be times where we have to kind of have hard conversations. And so, really
Mm-hmm.
walking them through the process of, like, I need you to fill out intake paperwork, before the intake. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
send it out through the patient portal. There has to be a credit card on file because,
Mm-hmm.
that's just the expectation. And
Right.
and making that really clear in my welcome letter in just a gentle way, I'm hoping is going to be helpful. Even, you know, spelling out, like, these are the things that will help you be prepared for telehealth sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Have working equipment, be in a quiet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am baby friendly, and part of the work with, perinatal clients is that self care. And so I do allow, like, if you need to snack, yes, please snack. If you need to,
Yeah.
like, drink, all of that stuff, have some comfort items. You have to nurse the baby, feed the baby, whatever you need to do, that's okay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, just come back to me. And even I actually still see some kids at night, and it's interesting working with kiddos over telehealth because
Yes.
um, parents just kind of hand them the computer or the iPad, and they're doing their thing. And there's
Mm-hmm.
been lots of times where kids have just, like, clicked off on me. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like calling the parent. And so really explaining from the beginning and getting ahead of some of
Yes.
that stuff. Now that I've
Mm-hmm.
had that learning curve, and you're always learning,
Of
but I
course.
feel like it's been a year since I've been open, and so I've really taken all of those experiences where I've been like, oh man, I should have problem solved for that, and trying to make it so it's like, all right, I'm going to get ahead of some of this stuff, and I'm going to be
Sure.
really clear about
Mm-hmm.
what this relationship looks like.
I love talking about this stuff because I think it's so helpful for people to, it normalizes it, first of all. I think it's also a case in point that you don't have to have every single thing figured out when you start. A lot of it is the patterns that develop, right? I mean, if you have it happen with one or two people versus you start to see this happening more frequently, then you've identified a need for more clarity
Mm-hmm.
and expectations. But I think what you're saying is such a great thing for people to be thinking about early on and almost doing that reverse of what would you be expecting if you were the client? What are the things that would be helpful for you to know to determine if the person's the right fit, but to also make the most out of the experience. And a lot of what you're describing with telehealth, we would think is common sense. But I found myself in the same situation of starting to record videos to prepare clients for
Mm-hmm.
having the most effective therapy sessions and not making any assumptions. And so you have some experience under your belt in this realm, and you're taking a lot of what you've experienced and you're putting it into practice. And it sounds like so far it's been well received. You'll have to see how it plays out. But from what I can tell, you're absolutely going to get, I think, more of what you're looking for in terms of people being committed to the process. If you start off that way, and you're really clear, then you can focus on the clinical work. And those things
Exactly.
are addressed, and you can go back to that form that they've signed or that policy that you've reviewed. And it's not a first time thing or something that they briefly looked over and then just signed without reading. It's more of a reminder. And I think the key is that there's such a need out there, more so than ever. And our time is valuable. And if someone is not ready for that process or they're not fully committed, that's time that someone else could have been utilizing to get the help. So,
Exactly. And part of the reason I've done private work is to be available to my family as well, and to
absolutely.
have, like, that balance. And so if I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, like, sitting here waiting for the thing is, it actually doesn't happen as frequently as I anticipated. I think I
Good.
was so used to, like, early intervention, and even at YTP, like, people kind of taking advantage of, like, they didn't have to pay for
Right.
anything, because YTP was grant funded.
Hmm.
So there were quite a few no shows, and I really haven't had that. But the times I have, it's like, oh, I could have been, throwing some laundry in or working on notes or things like that.
Exactly.
Exactly. Our time is valuable, and I'm really starting to learn that I don't need to be completely like available to every need clients have. That it's this is your this is your time, and
Right.
you're here, you're not.
Hmm. We also have made more of a shift in our practice of putting more ownership on the client for the clinical outcomes.
Mm.
So obviously, like we're there with you alongside you through the journey, but it is really only for that session. And as we know, so much of the work happens outside of the session. So really trying to hone in on what are some of those barriers to implementing a lot of what we talk about, remembering a lot of those key points, doing homework if we give them anything, or
Mhm.
following up on any of the recommendations we make for a podcast or a book. And so that's something that we're really exploring. But it's nice to get a lot of those foundational things. Like you said, you're so solid in the clinical skills, the work that's being done. So now it sounds like it's just fine tuning a lot of what feels right and is going to work for you within your own business. Is there anything else that you are currently tackling on the business side of things? So you're talking a little bit about insurance and learning
Yeah.
a lot about the credentialing and the billing and having those systems in place. Anything that's been really helpful with that?
Um, that has really been trial and error.
Yeah.
But it actually hasn't been like really difficult. The
Good.
billing piece, I was very anxious about that. And actually, it hasn't been it wasn't as overwhelming as I made it out to be. It really is
Mhm.
kind of cut and dry.
Yeah,
Partially because I use the same diagnosis all the time because I have a niche.
it's true.
Um, the only issue I've had with insurance is mass health. Like, so,
Really?
and I've had to work through that. Yeah, I sent my application in like
Mhm.
over a year ago. And I know they've had changeover, but I have not been credentialed with them. And I'm at the point where it's kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that. But being in this community, like
Mhm.
it's strange to me to not be working with a ton of moms from the Fall River area,
Yeah,
because a big part of like what I want to do is be able to help this community. And without that, it's
right.
really difficult.
Mhm.
And sometimes when people ask me, like, if I accept mass health, I find I'm over explaining because I feel really guilty that I'm not
Yeah.
able to provide that kind of service, to
Mhm.
people who have mass health. That's been the only like big thing with insurance.
Yeah.
The other thing is taxes,
Yeah.
and like, creating a system
The
to,
timing is really key here. It's at the
yeah,
forefront of our minds.
I know, because I've just gone through all of that with my accountant,
Mhm.
and like saving every receipt and coming up with this system for like what can be written off and things like that. That's
Yeah.
been a learning curve. What can be written off, what can't,
Mhm.
all that stuff. But I feel a little bit more confident going into it this year now that I've
Awesome.
gone through it once.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And it's also really refreshing to have someone on the show that truly understands the demographic that we serve, the area that we're in. And it is a really underserved area. And I feel that same passion to really provide accessible and affordable care. And I can totally understand the feelings of guilt that come up when there's a population that's in need. And because Mass Health doesn't have their act together, you're not credentialed yet, and it prevents you from being able to serve in the ways that we would otherwise if that barrier wasn't there. So
Right.
that's frustrating. But yeah, it seems like we have a very similar mission. So I would love for you to share with everyone listening about your practice. Tell us the name, and it sounds like
So my practice is Peace and Pearl Wellness
Mhm.
and Counseling.
And tell us how you came up with that name.
So I really, when I was coming up with names,
Yeah.
I wanted something that was kind of hippie, kind like authentic to me, um, and like that stood out. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had come up with like a bunch of different names, like the healing tree, but I was going to use my name at one point. Like there was a lot of
Running
options.
your practice is not an easy task.
It's not. It really isn't. And I knew at one point I was trying too hard, that I was giving it too much thought. It was almost like I needed to just let it come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, like, I just, people will often say to me, and this feels a little weird because I'm not bragging, but people will say, like, you present like this peaceful energy. And that's what I really wanted to, right
Yeah.
from the get-go, to let clients know, like, that this is going to be like peaceful and okay. And so at one point I'm like, all right, I know I want peace in it. And
Okay.
then my oldest has a June birthday, and one of the birthstones for June is pearl. And when I started to look more into it, like a pearl is a piece of sand that is, basically pulverized and goes through so much trauma to come out on the other side as this like beautiful thing.
Just got chills all the way down my arm.
And so that's what really resonated with me. And
Oh
so it
wow.
was like being hopeful, and
Mhm.
again, like that, like hippie granola, little piece of that, because I got to throw that in there.
I love
But
it.
that's how I came up with it. And the wellness and counseling, my goal at some point is to become trained in Reiki, and to be able to do like more holistic
Mm-hmm.
services as well. So I knew from the beginning that I needed to incorporate not just the counseling piece, but like the wellness piece in it. So when I do expand, I'm already set. So I see clients Monday through Thursday, which is really nice. That's kind of like a gift I've given to myself, to take
Yeah.
Fridays as an admin day, or if I have
Okay.
like appointments for myself or whatever, or sometimes just self care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my practice is primarily focused on perinatal mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So pregnant women, postpartum, birthing people.
Mm-hmm.
But I also work with some, interestingly enough, like I have a woman I see who's in her 60s. And it's funny because my mom was like, what does she need you for? And I said, women in their 60s are still parents too. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I didn't want to burn out with just focusing on PMADs. Like I wanted that to be like the primary focus, but
Mm-hmm.
I found that when I was at the preschool, a lot of the younger staff would come to me as like almost like an older sister type figure, for life advice and things like that. And I actually found I really enjoyed just like getting to talk to them like woman to woman. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to incorporate that too, like more like just general women's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some women who do not see me for like PMADs or parenting. But that piece, like you're always a mom. And so that piece
Oh.
always comes through, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I also am mindful about like women who are like in their late 30s,
Mm-hmm.
40s, that like the perimenopause, because so many of us, like myself included, are parenting now, but also dealing with perimenopause. And I hear a lot like, I'm losing my patience, this and that. And
Mm.
it's really gratifying to be able to say to women, like, this isn't who you are. This is just where you're at. Just like with your like perinatal journey, it's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
hormones and all of that stuff. So when you work with women or people who identify as women, there's so much to it. And then I have the kid piece, and so my goal really is to like do dyadic work because I love that. I love like doing the early childhood parent child mental health piece. And so um, right now I have a couple of kids on my caseload, 5, 6, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is like the anxiety, ADHD type
Mm-hmm.
work. But it's a lot of fun, but that's been a learning curve doing telehealth with children, like young children, and not to be able to have like my arts and crafts to go to or things like that. Like
Nice.
really trying to figure out how to do this like over the computer where like they're using their own toys, I'm using my own toys, like
Right.
things like that. But
Yeah, you got to think
it,
outside the box.
yeah, but it's been fun
Hmm.
to work on that. But
Wow.
yeah, that is really what my practice is about. And
Hmm.
on my website, I talk a lot about relationship because I really feel like healing comes through the power of relationship.
Yeah.
And you have to feel safe. You have to have that felt sense of safety with your provider if you're going to be able to open up about really vulnerable things. And I'm not sure there's anything more vulnerable than a woman sitting across from you saying like, I'm having all these awful thoughts about my baby and I don't want to have these awful thoughts.
Hmm.
And being able to hold space for that is really an incredible thing. And
Yeah.
you have to be able to be in relationship with them. And so in any of my clinical work through all through the years, but especially
Hmm.
now, it's about the relationship. And
Yeah.
really, that's what I want people to think of, like when they think of Peace and Pearl, is that, when I talk to Megan, she just makes me feel really good about where I'm at and who I am, and that she's just going to meet me where I'm at on any given day, you
Hmm.
know?
Well, I couldn't be happier that you've landed where you've landed. You are clearly doing work that you are meant to do, and it comes across. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that you shared how you came up with the name, and it seems so appropriate, and the authenticity shows through. So I will make sure to include your website and
Thank
social
you.
media links in the show notes. Anything, any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with to kind of keep people thinking even after they stop listening?
Yeah, I think if anybody is on the fence about private
Hmm.
practice, I think that really people have much more courage than they realize because it is a
Hmm.
brave thing to say, I'm going to go out on my own, and it's a brave thing to confront like where your stuff intersects with the business piece.
It's true.
But I feel like there it has helped me have a shift. It's helped me have a
Hmm.
shift as a professional, but it's
Yeah.
helped me have a shift as a woman. And there are definitely times where I don't feel confident. There are times where I'm questioning myself. There are times where I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, what am I really doing here? But when I'm able to like actually sit and reflect,
Hmm.
wow, how far I've been able to come and just grow
Hmm.
and
And
work
how many people you've helped.
exactly. Yeah, but in doing that, it reinforces why I do this work. And so there even though the work is hard and no clinician is going to like say, "Oh, it's not. The work's hard."
It is.
But there isn't a day that goes by where I log off. There's at least one thing that's happened in the day where I'm like, "This is why I do what I do."
Yeah.
And you need that. And I don't think you always get that like in community mental health. Like you might, but like there's so much other stuff. You
It's
know,
true.
with this, I'm able to, like you said, like the authenticity and just have it be me
Hmm.
is really something unique. And I think like if you're considering private practice, getting to like have control of your schedule,
Hmm.
getting like this opportunity to make mistakes and people don't know you've made mistakes so you
Hmm.
can go back and fix them,
Yeah.
is a really great opportunity that you wouldn't maybe get someplace else.
Really good final thoughts. Well, it has been so nice to get to know you better and your style and get a little bit more of a taste of what it would be like to work with you. So, for anyone out there, definitely reach out. So, you're only licensed in Massachusetts, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another goal. Like down the road,
Yeah.
get
Well, it still
licensed.
opens up the full scope of the state. So, but yeah, we'll
Exactly.
definitely stay tuned if you get licensed in other states. Thank you so much for the work you do, for being on the show and sharing what you did. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for this opportunity.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.